Hi, this is Kevin Kotz, and I will be your instructor for History 337, the Roman Republic. And what I thought I'd do in this short video is take you through a bit of the course overview and some of the requirements. What you're looking at here on this slide is a map of the Roman Republic about its greatest extent through the beginning of the empire with the rule of Augustus. And just so you can place yourself here, so this is Spain. You've got Gaul up here. Of course, you have Italy here. You've got North Africa through here. They haven't quite reached Egypt yet. And then you've got Greece. And then this is modern day Turkey, but in the ancient world, or sorry, in the more modern world called Asia Minor. And then they're pushing a bit into the Middle East. So what I've given you here is some details on me. So you can find my office at SF 436, and this is the fairly new building on campus. We are an online class, so you can certainly contact me by email anytime. I also can set up something called Zoom, which is a video conference room, and then we can meet by video if that's better for you. I will also have a physical office hour on Mondays, 11 to 12. You can certainly email me for another appointment. I'll be on campus most days this semester. And then finally, here's my email. And all of this you can also find on the syllabus. Okay, just an overview of the course. So obviously the course is on the Roman Republic. We are going to start the course on some prehistory, looking at a little bit of what's going on in Italy before the rise of the Romans. And in particular, we'll look at a group of people called the Etruscans, and believe it or not, there were certainly Greeks in the southern part of Italy before the Romans had a start. And then we're going to go through the beginning of the Republic and look at some of the myths of its founding and look at some of the archaeology to see if we can find any correspondence between what later Romans wrote about and what the archaeology is telling us. We don't really get a good history of the Roman Republic until about the middle of the 300s BC. And it's at that point where we can be fairly certain about what we're talking about and what was happening. So we'll spend a bit of time looking at the growth of the Republic, especially through various wars with Carthage, which was a civilization to the south in North Africa, and with the Greeks, and then eventually looking at the taking of a good part of Europe. We'll also spend some time looking at various topics like gender, slavery, and of course the special topics of the course, which is migration and sustainability. And by sustainability, I mean how did the Roman Republic sustain itself during this rapid growth that occurred between the 400s and the late 100s BC. And then, of course, we'll wrap up the course by looking at the end of the Republic and all of the various civil wars that were taking place during this period. There's a required reading, and sorry, it looks like some of the slide was cut off, but I just have one book that I'd like you to buy, and it's called The Roman Republic, A Very Short Introduction. And I chose this book for a couple of reasons. One, it's cheap, and the other is that it's short. So it gives all the basic information about this historical time period. There are certainly other books out there that are very detailed, but I thought, at least for this class, this small book will do it. I also list various articles, sometimes one or two every week, that are required reading. I will list optional readings in case you want to read further on some topic. And then, oh, I also see a spelling error here. Sorry, that should be readings. And then I also will give you a list of primary sources or sources that were written in the Republic period that you should be reading, especially for our discussion boards. I give you here the student learning outcomes. There's 6 of them, and these are something that I'm sure all of you have seen before. Every single course should have the student learning outcomes. Each week I will also list the weekly learning outcomes, and these will be important to look at because you'll be using these as your study guide. Okay, one thing I do want to say really quickly, if you haven't had a history course, is you really need to know the difference between primary and secondary sources. Primary source, probably the easiest way to remember it is this is anything written by the Romans during the period we are studying, or anything that they built. So written or archaeology during the time period of the Roman Republic that we're studying in this class. A secondary source is anything written by scholars today or in the recent period. So when you are writing your podcast, which I'll talk about in just a bit, your podcast transcript, you are writing a secondary source, but within that, you will be referencing at least one primary source, which again is something written or something built during the Roman Republic period. Okay, and I have a list of things here that I want you to really think about, and this will be one of your first assignments for this class, which will be filling out the What is History discussion board. So I've got 4 general questions here that I want you to think about and answer on the discussion board. The first one I'll just talk about briefly, especially if you're not a history major, and this is historiography. So historiography is the study of the writing of history. And it's an important topic, not necessarily for this class, but certainly if you want to go deeper into history, about how history is written, why it's written, and so on. So that's about as deep as we need to go into that. But the questions that I want you to think about and answer on the discussion board is, what is history? Like, what do you think history is? And when you answer these on the discussion board, you don't have to go into great detail unless you want to. I'm just looking for like a sentence or two. Another really important question, in particular for ancient courses, is, can what happened in the past truly be known? So can we really know what happened in the past, especially during the Roman Republican era? And if we can't, then how does that affect your question of what is history? So start thinking about these questions now. I also want you to think about, what are the sources of history? So I've already talked about this in the previous slide, but I want you to go into a little bit more detail. And again, if you haven't had a history class, just try and guess the answers to some of these. And then when you think about what the sources are, what can they tell us? Probably more importantly, when you think about this, is what can these sources tell us and what can they not tell us? So what you'll find, and this is certainly the case for the first part of our course, is that a lot of Roman history, early Roman history, is based on literary texts that are written centuries after the fact. So it's sort of our job to remember that and then to think about what that really means as we go through what we actually do know about Roman history. And then finally, and I'll be going through this in a little more detail later, but you will be referencing all of your sources in your assignments. So, and what I'd really like you to do is use the Chicago, something called in-text citation. So what you'll see here is the author, the year, and then the specific page number. So when you're writing along, this is how I'd like you to cite. If you're using footnotes, you certainly can. Then you would put this in a footnote. It's the same information, just a little more expanded. And then you will be creating a bibliography. So what I've done here is create the bibliography for this book. And then if you're using journal articles, you'll use the same thing, the in-text citation, where you give the author's last name, the year, and the specific page number that you're citing. If you're using footnotes, this is how it should look. And then again, for your bibliography, this is what you need to have in here. So you need to have the author, the title of the article, the name of the journal in italics, the volume number, the year, and then the entire page range for this article.